Go on.
You're
No, I mean it.
clearly
Go on.
you're clearly meant for stardom. I'm just saying.
I wish you would hurry up.
Well, man, every little bit, right? So,
Every little step.
yep. And by the way, we're live.
We're
So,
live.
yep. Welcome everybody to another Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild Press and RIZE. And I am here today with Ben White, who is one of our amazing acquisition editors, as well as, standard book editors. And we are here to answer whatever questions you may have. It can be about writing, it can be about publishing. Sometimes we may even ask you a couple of questions. It's a little bit more fun that way, I think. So, so Ben, how have you been? How are you doing?
I am doing well, just busy. We've hit a busy time. With, I'm juggling two novels and two anthologies, and got some others waiting to hear from me to get to them. But I'm headed that way. If you're one of those people waiting to hear from me, I'm headed your way. I promise.
Gary Zenker says, just wanted to say you are so great to be accessible to everyone. Well, thank you, Gary, and thank you for joining us. Every person who joins us, it's just that much more fun to interact with you. So, very, very cool. Oh, Amy's here. Awesome. All right, I'm adding Amy in.
Hey,
Hey, how are
buddy.
you?
I'm good.
There
We
she
have a
is.
crazy, weird storm right now. It's like thundering, but it sounds like it's going away. So I decided to join you guys.
Oh, awesome. Well,
Yeah.
if somehow you get disconnected for some reason, I think we'll all understand.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's been so hot here. I walked outside today and I was like, "Ooh, it's like electric outside." I don't know. So yeah,
oh
hopefully
my.
it'll rain itself out and then it'll be gone.
Well, I heard yesterday. Oh, and by the way, if anyone is watching who hasn't been with us before, Amy is also one of our newer editors, and she's fantastic. If you have any questions or comments, just go ahead, pop them into the comments section. I'll repeat the question, and then each of us will take an opportunity to provide an answer. So actually, Risa Dodson, hey Risa, she says, hi. Is there a particular trend in storytelling? So why don't we start with Amy? What do you think?
Um, I feel like a lot of people recently have been, well, we're still, I guess, avoiding pandemic talk. I don't know, but there's a lot of, I don't want to say romance, but a lot of more like hopeful literature. I feel like,
Hmm.
just because I think we were so bogged down for so long, people were really trying to look in the bright side of things. And that really makes me excited because it's nice to read a happy kind of book. Um, that being said, there's also very serious things coming out, but yeah, I kind of see more lighthearted like trends lately.
Cool. Ben, what do you think?
I think there for a while we were seeing a lot of memoirs. You remember,
Mm,
Lisa? We saw a lot of increase in memoirs and we were thinking. Of course, it's anecdotal, but we were thinking that people had time at home and they said, "Well, I've got this idea, and I want to tell about my experiences," and submitted memoirs. And there were some stories that there was people. Well, I've got the time to write now, so I'm gonna write that story that's always been on my mind. And we got a lot of good ideas submitted. Some foundation, but uh, the polish for those stories I think needed a lot more work. It was people had the time, but then they deviated from the storytelling itself. So we saw a trend of those along the way, but the memoir is what stands out for me and what we've seen a lot as far as the trend goes.
mm. Yeah, I so for in terms of submissions, Risa, Ben's right. We saw a lot of memoirs and a lot of people referencing, like, well, as soon as we hit lockdown, I realized I wanted to write this book for 20 years. I never bothered to do it. So now I'm actually going to take this opportunity to do so. And some of them were, well done, and others, it was more like a stream of consciousness. It was almost like, it wasn't quite like reading someone's diary, but kind of. So we really had to be selective in terms of what, we were going to pick up. In terms of in the marketplace, based on my conversations with our agent, she referenced that there's a big demand for action. To Amy's point, a lot of desire for things that have some kind of happy ending. So you can have crappy stuff happen, but at the end, everybody's got to come out on top. There's always a demand for thrillers. There's always a demand for horror. And when I say that, I actually mean cross genre as well. So it doesn't have to be a hardcore thriller, a hardcore horror. It can be something that it's like horror with a touch of, like science fiction and fantasy, that kind of thing. And then from another dear friend who is a phenomenal author, and he's won tons of awards and bestseller and so on. He heard that there's actually a bigger demand now for fantasy trilogies. So I guess now that so many people are home and audiobooks, the demand has exploded. Again, I'm assuming it's because people are home, or that they want something either on in the background or on when they're driving or things like that, and so that's increasing demand. Romance is always hot. Romance has a hardcore following in general, and YA in general, young adult, is pretty much always hot. There was a brief period when this new form of young adult was out called new adult, which was intended to be 19-year-olds, targeting 19-year-olds and above, and it never really quite took off for, I'm sure, a variety of reasons. So great question. Thank you, Risa. Priya Meyer asks, I'd love to know what tropes, cliches, situations you dislike in romance. This time I'll start with Ben.
What I do like is where the romance and the intimacy is subtle. I think there's a tendency to over exaggerate the intimacy for no reason, except it's just we can because we know the words. And but the well-written story, in my opinion, is the one that is very subtle, and it's probably because I'm an old movie. I grew up watching old black and white movies where you never saw sex, but it was there. And like Casablanca comes to mind. What did they do overnight? What that is? And so a story that lets you, maybe it's even ambiguity. We don't really know. There's the words aren't there to tell you what happened in that romance, but to be subtle and just show the relationship bloom and blossom and follow along the story and work with the story and fit into the story, and not just for its own sake. Romance for its own sake, I think. To sum that up.
How about you, Amy?
Well, I'm going to give kind of a Ben answer and talk about what I do like instead. So a cliche that I think always works, it just always, for me it does, is the whole enemies to friends, lovers, whatever it is. And that's in romance or anything else. I like some friction. I like, conflict. On that same note, I really like when romance is mixed with other things as well. So whether it's some sci-fi or some thriller, whatever it is, I really like that. And also mixing in just that personal conflict. I like when a main character has something that they're trying to accomplish as well. And then the romance is sort of an added bonus. So that's kind of like what I like about it.
Cool. Yeah, I admit, when I was a teenager, I went through my hardcore romance book period where, I just, and it probably helped too that you get a paperback back then for like 2.99, from your from your local bookseller, and or from your, or I would just pick up a bunch at the library. And what's interesting is, or maybe not, I went through a horror period, a sci-fi period, a fantasy period, a romance period, where, I mean, I just devoured like anything and everything available within that genre. So, in terms of what I don't like, it's not so much what I don't like. It's more, I'm totally gonna do the bailing on answering the question directly by giving you what I do like. I love a romance that's part of a larger story,
Mhm.
and I love it where it's really integrated into the overall story, and there's something about that romance or that those characters' relationships that really propels the story forward, where, like, if you took out their relationship or if you took out their romance, you'd feel like the story was incomplete, right? Like it just didn't
Mhm.
accomplish what it meant to accomplish. I actually used to go to Yale Writers Conference a lot, and I remember we had one group, and you had to pre-submit writing. I think it was like 20 pages of something. And there's this one gentleman who had written gorgeously written work, but to Ben's point, like he kind of went out of his way to write a very detailed, um let's just say, bordering on erotica, uh, pretty close to X-rated romance scene. And but there wasn't a purpose to it. It was just like it was there to be there. I guess like if you wanted to take a bubble bath and, you know, read it, then maybe that was your evening, or get a glass of wine or something. I don't know, maybe a shot of tequila. I have no idea. But I was like, my actual feedback to him was, "This is gorgeously written, but I don't understand what this has to do with the broader story." So,
Mhm.
yeah, that for me is a big thing. So that's a great question. Thank you, Priya.
There's
Uh,
a book coming out from us, Heather Finch, that
mm,
it's not necessarily a romance, but it has romance in it. The main character is now her husband has died, so a lot of it's flashback about her relationship with her husband, but she is uh, more interested now in becoming the writer that she always wanted to become. And there's a Facebook friend who is involved, and then she's in Scotland on a writer's retreat where there's a Scottish man involved. So the complexity of it draws the reader in to think about, well, what's she going to choose? She's got three choices: the
Mhm.
Facebook friend, the Scottish guy, or nobody. Just be a writer
mm,
like you wanted to be. And when I was
mm,
editing it, I thought about the readers having those choices to make. How do they want this story to end? And who are they
Mhm.
pulling for? Which scenario are they pulling for? Which is a very good complex storyline to work in there. And Heather Finch is forthcoming.
And another one is actually Broken Petals. That one's out of Rise, and that one's by Tasha Hutchinson, and it comes out this month actually. And that one is about a young woman who has Huntington's disease, and because she's lived with this disease her whole life, she's terrified of having a real relationship, and meets the man of her dreams, and it's all about, her basically reclaiming life. So it's a very cool story. Gary Zinker says, "What are Running Wild's publishing plans for the next 18 months or so? Do you have any anthologies coming up?" Wow, that's a great question, Gary. So we actually every year we have a novella anthology and we have a short story anthology. Oftentimes, the novella anthology ends up being a two book because uh, you don't really want to publish necessarily a piece that's more than say 150,000 words. And some of these, once we're done the editing process, it would be like a 400,000 word book. I mean, can you imagine trying to pick up that thing, right? I mean, you would pretty much drop it. If you dropped it, your foot would be broken. Like it just would not work. And then we have the annual short story anthology that Ben's working on now for both RIZE and for Running Wild. Actually, the ones for RIZE are new. This is the first year that we're gonna have. Actually, 2023 will be the first year we'll have the short story anthology and the novella anthology for RIZE. I'm really excited about that. That's going to be really phenomenal. And then we've already selected our entire catalog for next year for 2023. For both houses. For 2024, we have pretty close to a full plate, but not quite. For Running Wild, we have only, I don't think we've only acquired maybe a handful for RIZE for 2024. And actually, the very first week of August, our acquisition editors and those on our leadership team are all going to sit down and go through what our favorites are that are currently in our backlog of submissions. And we're going to basically round out 2024 and 2025. So if you've submitted a piece to us, then you're going to hear from us either way, probably by at least, I'd say, mid-August. So look out for that. It'll be I'm very excited about that. Now, one thing also to be aware of is, because we have changed our process, I'd say quite a bit in the last, couple of months. We're small, so we only publish like 15, 20 books, 10, 15 books per house per year. And we get upwards of 800 submissions, if not more, every year. And that, and we get a lot of great work. I mean, you guys are rocking it in terms of storytelling. Like it's amazing the stories that we get. And we've had times where editors fought over wanting to work on a piece that we had accepted. So, I mean, really great stuff. So what this means, though, is that we're probably going to be sending a lot of, I don't really want to call them rejections, because it's not really a rejection. It's more of a, look, our slate's full for 2023, 2024, and 2025, but we really enjoyed your work, and we hope that you would keep us in mind for the future. So I just don't want anyone to be heartbroken if they get that message. But part 2 of that is, if you do get that kind of message from us and you haven't submitted your piece out to other publishers, go do it. Because if we loved it, there's a high likelihood other publishers are going to love it as well. So really take it as like a sign that, you're on the right track, you're doing all the right stuff, and, use this as your opportunity, your launching point to then send it elsewhere. So I don't know, Amy, do you have anything that you want to add?
Really just, I think for us, getting our authors into readers' hands is our main focus. So yeah, definitely in the 18 months plus is expanding who is going to have access to these books, who is going to fall in love with all of the titles that we have selected. That's really what we are thinking about when we're editing, selecting, all the behind the curtain kind of stuff that goes on, is how do we get this story to do, as much impact as it, the first time that we read it. So that's, again, behind the scenes, what doesn't really get seen. We're just trying to get the best stories into the most hands as possible.
Yep, totally. Ben, what do you think?
I think the ones that we really like to send back are the ones that have our attention. but for some reason that they're going to be too much for us as a small press with a handful of editors to really work on. So when we send back the feedback that you polish this and resubmit it to us, or polish this and resubmit it somewhere else, because your idea and the story, the plot line, and the characters or whatever's carrying it works. So and when we get to put in that email that we go back and say, well, we didn't accept it this time, but we add the why nots. Take that as encouraging, because that's the way we write it, because it's not just a basic rejection email that okay, gone, declined. But we like to have the conversation with the authors, and if you get that conversation from any publisher, call that victory, because that's appreciation for your work, even though it's not being published. It's still appreciation, and telling you for whatever reason to polish it and resubmit, and keep the idea alive, keep the novel alive or story.
Yeah,
I'd like to add one more thing to that. So I was published, one of my short stories, Ben actually edited my first short story that was published with their anthology. And that's how I got introduced as a writer to Running Wild Press. And I had another manuscript that I submitted to them that they liked but couldn't publish. So to Ben's point, there are things that we fall in love with, but maybe we just don't have the resources or whatever it is. And on that point as well, though, like, keep at it. I've been all summer working on that project that I submitted to them that they liked, but it wasn't quite there. And I've come up with some really cool ideas. So as, any kind of writer listening to this, just keep at it. And every day I'll try something new. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But just keep at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And know too that, like, we've had times when half of the people who were reviewing it loved it, and the other half were like, oh, but it has all these issues. And I've literally had it where our guys will send me on a mission and demand that I have a call with the author and walk them through the different ways that they can improve on the story. So, know that all of this is done, with passion, with love, with caring. We want to make sure that you guys are in the best light possible, and that, your stories, when they make it to readers' hands, those readers are just, completely in love with the story that you've written. So, Leonard Pig says, greetings, everyone. Greetings, Leonard. What's the difference between the two publishing houses? So that's a great question. Running Wild Press publishes great stories with great writing that don't fit neatly in a box. That's our tagline. What that translates into is basically different variations of cross genre. So even like we publish memoirs as well. Oftentimes, though, those memoirs will have a tinge of, some of them have actually been written as narrative poems or had narrative poems within them. Some of them, they use an alternative structure, but all of them are, some type of cross genre or cross form. And then at RIZE, we publish great genre stories written by people of color and other underrepresented groups. And so that one, what's so phenomenal about it is the really, I want to say, almost eclectic nature of a lot of the stories, because I don't know how many people out there know about this, but there was an article by the New York Times, I want to say it was in 2019, about the fact that publishing is incredibly biased, where it's something insane, like over 85% of all books that are published are actually written by Caucasians in North America and I believe Canada. That's obscene, especially when you look at our general population. And it means that there's a big number of people out there who, when they're going to the bookstore or they're going to find some kind of story in general, and they're looking for someone that represents them, they can't find that person, right? Or when they pick up the book, it's not on point. because it's got broad generalizations or cliches or assumptions about individuals who are from a different culture. And, we've got to stop that. That's just, it's asinine. I'm saying this and you got 3 Caucasians sitting here. But I promise you, we are not the ones writing the books. And I also promise you that the people behind the scenes at Running Wild and at RIZE, we have a really nice eclectic group of people. So anyway, so that's the difference between the 2 houses. Melissa Eisenmeyer says, so what are your wholesale policies? I'm looking at buying a building for my bookstore and will need to buy some extra inventory after I do that. And I'm trying to order my new books from small or independent publishers. Melissa, that's
Yay!
yay! Woo!
Yeah.
Melissa, that's congratulations. What an amazing accomplishment. And how fun to have your own bookstore. It's funny. I've run into a couple of different like independent booksellers recently that they use it as a way to create like a community place. So, they don't just hold like book signings or talks, but they'll even do like a Dungeons and Dragons event. We'll meet there like every week, right? Or they'll have people come in and they'll talk about the different stories that they love that have been made into TV and film, or TV and films that have been have then had associated books written about the same characters. So very, very fun. I mean, like really exciting stuff. And you can buy any of our books. We actually use a distributor. So our distributor is IPG. If you go to ipg.com, you can see all of the different small publishers or mid-sized publishers that IPG represents. So you just go to them and you buy directly from them wholesale through for their catalog. Just ask them, for what kind of catalogs they have. If you reach out to small publishers, they'll be more than happy to tell you exactly who their distributor is and give you guidance on how to reach out to them. So if you want more information, feel free to you can email me at runningwildeditor@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer any additional questions that you have. So congrats. That is fantastic. Gary Zenker says, Lisa, would one of your editors be willing to talk with my writers group via Zoom like you did in the past? If so, I'd love to hear from them. Gary, absolutely. I'd be happy to do it. Again, I'm sure Ben would do it. I'm sure Amy would do it. So any one of us. Again, you can feel free to just email me at runningwildeditor@gmail.com and I'll hook you up. That would be totally, that'd be fantastic. We'd love it. Don McIntyre says, current thinking seems to be that an author must not write from the point of view of characters from backgrounds different than their own, i.e. race, religion, etc. In other words, let those folks tell their own story. What are your thoughts? I'm going to start with Ben, who's probably wants to kill me for doing that.
No.
We'll give him the hard questions.
Yeah. I'm saving everything I'm going to say from now on for Gary Zinker. I saw that question come up, Don, and first I thought, write what you know. And if you know a different culture, or you know the perspectives of a different culture, then it's easier to do that. If you're projecting stereotypes and prejudged judgments, then let somebody else tell that story. It's not yours to tell. And especially from a poetry background, you want to guard against misappropriation of someone's culture. And that's the white guy from Kentucky saying that. And But if you want to misappropriate my culture in Kentucky, just make sure you put shoes on people because they do wear shoes. Um, but it's and I'm married into the Hispanic culture in Albuquerque, and so the door is a little bit more open for me to write about my in-laws, for instance, from my perspective. But I think it's still got to be framed from what you know and how you see it, but still avoiding the stereotypes and the tropes and the misappropriation of culture that has a tendency to run into the story for no reason, because it just takes away the complexity of shared human experience between races, between people, and then you get the subdivision of races or gender or whatever has them separated. They could share some very nice aspects of living and the appreciation for different things that they share, and so I think that comes with a fair amount of empathy for other people's situations, and to know and to be able to see that as an author and get it to come across and ring true. That's the skill. That's the author skill. And if you don't have it, then stay in your lane where your skill is. But if you've got that, and you can make your characters multicultural, multi-complex, then do it, and just keep it true to who they are. Let your characters speak, and not come up with the stereotype.
How about you? What do you think, Amy? That was thorough.
I second all of Ben's. No, I think it's really about, we're here 2022. We've learned a lot, hopefully, with, having to be shut down and really being forced to see other people's perspective through social media or maybe in your intimate kind of circles. But really think about, there's so much richness in your own community. There's so much there that could be written, and it's not going to be taken directly from people's lives, but, we all have, like Ben said, this human struggle. We all have that. And I also think it's about creating space for people who might not have been heard before. Mm-hmm. So in that, a lot of that is above writers' kind of job description. It's with, us as editors, is allowing, different kind of people to tell their story, or publishing houses as a whole to have that mission to feature people who might not have the spotlight to tell their story. So yeah, it's not like it's a cliche thing. I think it's just, in 2020, we want to be able to allow people the freedom and the space to tell their stories.
So I second everything Ben and Amy just said. And then just to kind of piggyback onto it, for me, I think it's more about creating the space and enabling that space to be supportive of those unheard voices. Yeah. Because I think, not anybody, but if a writer agnostic of race, color, religion, sex, if you do enough research and you talk to enough people and you bother to listen and you bother to understand, then you have a greater likelihood of writing effectively from the perspective of a background that's different than yours. And if you're smart about it and you pass that story on to someone who is of that culture or of that background and ask them, hey, would you do me a favor and just read this just in case I somehow slipped into some kind of trope that I didn't intend to do, then you're going to have a much higher likelihood of success. And the most successful authors I've seen, again, no matter of race, religion, they did exactly that. They did a ton of research. They spoke to a ton of people to find out, what find out and understand more about their backgrounds and so on. I also think we need to be very careful in today about some broad generalizations that occur quite frequently where, like, so my husband is African American. He's actually part Cherokee. How he was raised is very different because he grew up in the Philadelphia area of the East Coast of the United States. How he grew up, though, is very, very different than how, like, let's say his great grandfather was raised, who grew up in the South, right? And also, the world as we know it was quite different then as well, too. Sadly, not different enough, in my opinion. Like we should have advanced much more by now, not just regarding those of African descent, but any one of a background other than Caucasian, right? And I think it's also sad that we even have this broad generalization of Caucasian or white versus Black or African American, because in reality you can be from Africa and you can be from a bajillion different countries in that continent, and you most likely, if you are from there, you don't define yourself as being from Africa. You define yourself as being from a much more specific location within that space, right?
Mhm.
And the same with Caucasians. Caucasians can be from, you can be European, which again, that's a continent. That is not an actual, it's not a country, it's not a city, it's not a culture, right? If you travel and you bother to travel to, multiple countries, you'll then see and have exposure and have a better understanding of, like, wow, for some reason we have chosen to try and put people in buckets and force them into those buckets. So really what this is about is, to Amy and Ben's point, it's opening the door and giving those people, those individuals, a voice so we can hear the wider variety of voices and understand those compelling stories that, because we may not be aware of all the different points of perspectives that are out there because we've been so isolated. We open that door and we open it wide. So Don McIntyre says Tony Hillerman mastered that. Amen. I don't know Tony Hillerman, but now I feel like I should. So
Well, I was going to tell Dawn that she mastered it as well in her novel The Paper Pirate, where she has a group of people, and even when you have a group of people, whether the same race or religion or not, you're still juggling characteristics and personalities that you've got to tap into, because it's so easy to make all your characters sound like you, and they may not. And so those 6 or 7 characters that Don had as owners of the bookshop, they were different characters and they came across as different personalities, and that's a skill. And no matter, like I say, no matter what race or religion, it's a skill to get them to be different people on the page.
Yeah, absolutely. Don says thank you.
I saw that. You're welcome.
So Priya Meyer says a classic that does this well is The Pearl by John Steinbeck. A passionate view of the plight of colonized indigenous Mexicans. He spent a lot of time with them. Also, a writer doesn't always have to write a character according to what their race implies. A BIPOC character is a human being like everyone else. 100%. You totally nailed it. Yeah, absolutely. These are fabulous questions, guys. Keep them coming. This is great. This is exactly what we want.
If I sat down to write a story, and even if I included, say, my sister, and coming up in Kentucky, and the story included me and my sister, or our characters on the page, there's a danger that I would be misappropriating her story as well. and not getting it right because she has a different perspective. So it comes down to really understanding the characters and what they would be like in real life and on the page, and it should ring true. That's a very Hemingway thing to say, ring true, but but I'll say it anyway. But since we got Steinbeck there, I'll come back with Hemingway and say ring true.
Yeah, I've been editing. Mark Lopez is coming out. I think it's sometime next year with a book. We've been working on it. I mean, his work on this has been really great. But his main character is this 12-year-old girl, and he has no experience with, what did 12-year-old girls think? I don't, and he did his whole research. He, talked to women, talked to them about, female things or just human being type things. So I feel like you don't necessarily have to center it in one identity. It can be as a human being or a person from a certain neighborhood or a person that believes a certain thing or values family first or, something like that. So, when you're thinking about characters and making them have their own voice, really think about what drives them. What is their experience? How can I relate to that experience and tell their story through maybe what I have been through?
Yeah, that's excellent. Excellent points. Absolutely. So for anyone who may have joined us just recently, this is Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything, and I am Lisa Kastner. I'm here with two of our phenomenal editors, Ben and Amy, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have around publishing, editing, writing. It honestly can be whatever you want. We will do our best to answer your questions. And we may do some tap dancing because we're really good at tap dancing as well. But, bottom line, you'll get some kind of answer. And we are here every Thursday at 5 o'clock Pacific time. For just in case you're watching and you're like, do they always do this? Yeah, pretty much, unless one of us is wildly ill or traveling or something like that. But other than that, yeah, we're here. And if you are a writer and you would love to build more of a roadmap around your career in writing, then I'm actually going to be teaching a class this Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time at the Diamond Valley Writers Guild meeting. And I'm basically taking some techniques that I know from career planning and those a variety of techniques that I know that some very well established authors had used when they were first coming up. And so this is your chance to have a true action plan, right? Not just all right, let me just sort of figure something out. I'm going to write a story and throw it out to a billion people and see if someone bites. But this is something that it's truly something that you can execute as soon as you leave that class. So if you are interested in joining, then all you need to do is email. I'm going to put the email address in the chat. So you want to email the Diamond Valley Writers Group, and you just email them here at dvwritersguild@gmail.com. And just let them know that you're interested in the class that I'm going to be teaching for them, how to build your writing career, this Saturday at 9:30 a.m. And they will give you the hookup. So don't miss it. Awesome. So what else is going on with you two? Just to put you on the spot so you feel incredibly... It's
I have been lately, so it's very hot. I'm in the South, so it's very hot and humid. We've had weird kind of storms, but I have been trying to balance new projects and old projects as well. So I've had a lot of recent inspirations that I want to kind of try to get down on paper. And I feel like that's the summer calling, right? You have all of these ideas and nothing gets, a book doesn't get written in like, super short amount of time in the summer because it's like it's hot and there's things to go explore. But there's lots of ideas out there. So that's what I've been doing, is kind of writing those down and then trying to balance that with like, okay, I have family life. School starts in like 2 weeks
Oh,
for my
wow.
kids.
No
I know.
way.
Yes. And I did not know that until I sat down and looked at the calendar, and we got a welcome message from my son's school, like, hey, here's the new teacher. And I was like, oh my goodness, where did the summer go? Right. So yeah, I've been trying to balance imagination and fun with, the things that I have to get done every day as well.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Ben, what about you?
The big news is, well, I'm juggling the anthologies and the novels, but they'll get done. They're important, and all the important stuff gets done. But on August 4th, the Coast Guard's birthday, there's a book coming out called Always Ready. And it's in Latin, it's Semper Paratus, which is the Coast Guard motto. But it's Always Ready by Benjamin B. White. You may have heard of him before.
That might be you. But, I don't know.
Very nice.
It's kind of cool because I've got 2 years in the Army and 20 years in the Coast Guard.
Wow.
And for a long time, after I was out of the Army, I was still writing Army stuff. So to see some Coast Guard stuff make the light of day and actually be appreciated and published is it's good. It's rewarding. And they're basically my own genre, Lisa. It's a poemoir about my experience in the Coast Guard in poetry form. And
awesome.
So poemoir, you heard it here first. That's August 4th. Actually, the pre-order is ready for the ebook. It's not ready for the hard copy yet, but the ebook can be pre-ordered.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I've finished the novella anthology for Running Wild, the novella anthology for RIZE. Those are going to come out, I think it's like May or June of next year. Really excited about that. There's some really, really fun stories in there, all different genres, just super fun. I'm also editing 2 novels, one of which is in the revision stage. The other one we literally kicked off last night. So I'll start working on that shortly. I'm always looking for new ways to spread the word about our amazing stories and our phenomenal authors. So, keep a lookout for that for us, please. And what I also love is if you guys have any thoughts or ideas on classes that we can teach. So I actually love going out and teaching at conferences and teaching at workshops or, writers' getaways, that kind of stuff. If you guys know of any that you would like to see us, just let me know. And if I can't make it, I'm more than happy to pass the word on to our editors. And if you want a specific editor, again, just email me and I'll pass the word on. My emails, again, it's runningwildeditor@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Would love to get your ideas and your thoughts. In the past, I've taught classes on like how to be your own best editor. And it seemed to have been popular. People seem to have enjoyed it. But I would really rather, instead of me making up stuff out of my little noggin, I'd rather hear from you what you love us to bring forward in terms of stories or in terms of classes. And if you know of a writers' conference or some kind of, or even like, a library get together, this doesn't have to be for writers. It can be for readers, anything, I'd love to have us come out and we would adore being a part of your gathering. So definitely keep us all in mind. And I think that's all the big stuff I can think of right now. We've still got about 10 minutes left. So if I don't know, Ben or Amy, if you guys have any questions for me, or if you want to ask the people on the line if they have, uh, if you have questions for them, because don't forget, this is recorded. So if someone's tuned in and it's not Thursday between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, then they can always respond through the chat and we can go back and check it out the subsequent fabulous, the next week. So, you have any questions for the folks that are tuned in?
I have a question that kind of goes with the like trends that, we're seeing. On the other end, do you guys as readers, as writers, do you have any trends or any things that you're passionate about that you want us to know as editors, as people selecting new books that are coming out? Are there things that we're missing? Are there things that you're excited about that we just don't know about? Yeah, we want to know what kind of stories that you want as well.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, I mean, if you have a story that you haven't seen that you would love to see on the page, or if you have a preference in terms of genre or form or perspective or anything, right, that you would love to see more of, let us know, because we will definitely keep an eye out for those stories. So that's an excellent point. Thank you, Amy. How about you, Ben?
It's just something that I'm working on. The two novels that I'm working on, um, both are going to deviate from traditional structure.
Mm.
One is a dystopian future science fiction novel that it's really, the way it's written is going to make the reader feel like a future anthropologist discovering these fragments of ideas and action that's going on, and which is really kind of cool, and it's going to break away from prose and look like poetry in a couple of different places. But it's okay because in the future, in this dystopia, there are poets singing along the way, and like traveling poets. But then the other one is the structure of a military memoir, basically, looking back and telling the story in real time, but also adding paragraphs from the same soldier 40 years later or 20 years later, at a different age, and really explaining the feelings and the emotions that go with 20 years later. But my question would be, what do you all think as readers to come across a book that is broken up the structure and it's there to surprise you and draw you into another type of dimension of storytelling?
Yeah, that's a great point,
It's
because
coming.
Yeah.
well, like I know there are some people who love mysteries by certain authors, and others they hate them because some mystery writers, they don't provide any hints, right? So you'll go through the whole piece and then you get to the end and you're like, where'd that come from? And then you go back and you reread it, and well, because there were no hints associated with it, right? But so I mean, everybody has such everyone has a preference in terms of what they get when they're going through the story. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, do you actually like alternative structures? Like, I know I do, but it's also, I've been reading for a very long time, and I love to see that kind of play in with structure and point of view, and again, if it's done well, right? So clearly and to a certain extent, we're acquiring books that we know that we're going to enjoy and that we hope that you will. So we'd love to hear about it if you're like, oh gosh, I want to see this, I've never seen it before, or I don't want to see this, and all you guys seem to do is publish this kind of crap. sure, let us know that too, right? So
Yeah. And it's the author of the science fiction novel uh, doesn't want to be Asimov. You know, he doesn't want to write that type of science fiction. He wants to write what he writes. And there's some words in there that I think he made up. And I think we're leaving them because it's the future. It may be a new word in the new dictionary later on. Well, I think I know what that means, but I'm not sure. Let me look that up.
well, if you can figure out the
His
meaning
best friend.
contextually, then rock on, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
That's awesome. Very cool. All right. So for anyone watching, we've got like 5 minutes left. I think don't forget, we're going to be here again next week, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Please come ask us any kind of questions. These have been phenomenal questions. Anything from questions around writing to what's popular in the industry today to, like how do you handle, more complex situations when you've got characters that are from alternate backgrounds. This has been fabulous, guys. Really, really appreciate it. And again, just want to reinforce, if you have a conference or you have a some type of gathering, it can be through Zoom or it can be in person, and you'd love to have someone from Running Wild or RIZE come and talk, we would absolutely love to do so. That said, please be careful out there. I was given a heads up yesterday that it sounds like Los Angeles County, at least potentially broader, is going to go back into lockdown because the is it BA.5 strain is so viral. It is so contagious that, again, hospitals are just getting overwhelmed again. So they just need to find a way to contain it. So just please be careful when you go out. And, if you haven't gotten your vaccination, and I know there's this big debate, I think only like 50% of Americans have actually been vaccinated. I got to say, like I obviously have had COVID. I cannot imagine at how horrid it would have been if I had not gotten vaccinated and if I had not gotten the booster. So, it just being vaccinated, that enabled me to be able to stay home and be ill versus being forced to be hospitalized. So, again, just please be safe. Please, and if you know anybody who is alone during this period, please reach out to them and just check on them, because even though we're not in total isolation anymore, we're more like in partial isolation. There are so many people out there now who are really, really, they're just in their apartments or in their homes all by themselves. I've seen far too many articles about individuals who had died, and no one knew that they had passed away until like 4 days later. So, just be empathetic. Please check in on those individuals who are on their own, and even if it's just to say hi and make sure they're okay. So, and on that note, I think I want to thank Ben and Amy for joining us. You guys are fabulous. As always, it's just a phenomenal conversation. I want to thank everybody here who tuned in. Your questions, again, were absolutely wonderful. We love, love, love questions. Don't miss us. Again, same bat time, same bat channels. And if you are watching and it is not Thursday at 5 p.m., please feel free to go ahead and pop your questions into the comments section. I'm always going back and double checking for anything new. And we would love to have you join us next time. So with that, have an amazing evening, and wishing everyone to stay safe, and much love and fabulousness. So, ciao.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.